Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast, where we bring you interviews with industry leaders, climate champions, sustainability practitioners, EHS and Hazmat professionals making an impact in their businesses today. Each leader solving complex challenges and delivering solutions within their areas of expertise. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and thanks for joining us today. Before we jump in, make sure to follow us on your devices and visit my website at www.seankgrady.com and sign up for our newsletter and email announcements. Now let's get started. Well, welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast, Wendy. Today's guest is Wendy Buckley. She's the president and CEO of Stars Hazmat Services. So, Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, thank you for coming. And Wendy is a dedicated hazmat transportation expert with a master's in environmental sciences and health and safety. She's also a certified project manager and has over 27 years of experience in the private industry and state and federal agencies. She's committed to protecting workers, the public, the environment, and capital assets by improving safety, increasing regulatory compliance, and managing risks. So, Wendy, tell us a little bit about your company and how you got started in the business and all the services that you're kind of currently providing.
So I got started because I was actually going to join the Marine Corps to be a pilot. That was my goal. And then talked to my Vietnam vet dad and decided that might not be the right path for me. So I joined the fire department instead, which provided some amazing opportunities. I got to, be a firefighter and run hazmat calls. I remember my first hazmat call vividly. It was very exciting. And I was hooked from that point on. So fast forward probably 10 years, that led to me becoming a hazmat inspector for the DOT, for FRA specifically, Federal Railroad Administration.
Okay.
So I was inspecting all kinds of different chemical shippers, railroads that ship hazardous materials, and man, it was the best job ever. I loved that job. That went on to opportunities to become a trainer, so I was learning how to train people in all the different sets of regulations.
Right.
And eventually I became a global laboratory supply manager for North America for a company. And then I eventually started my own company. So I've had this about 13 years now.
Okay.
And we've been as big as 14 employees. And of course, now some code, we're a little smaller, but we still provide consulting services, which is really a lot of fun. We get to work with all sorts of different companies, warehouses, shippers, carriers, and we do training, auditing, and basically helping companies be better at what they do, because most of them, it's not their core expertise.
Right.
So helping them do hazardous materials the best they can while they get to focus on their core business. That's what we strive on.
Well, Wendy, one of the reasons we brought you in to have our interview was we're going to cover the topics of lithium-ion batteries. And this is the season for Christmas, and millions of batteries are going to be bought to provide power to all these toys that Santa Claus is bringing to all the children. So for everyone listening and watching, what types of batteries are considered lithium-ion batteries, and why should we care?
So lithium-ion batteries includes anything that's rechargeable. And the reason we care is because they do pose a hazard. We're going to get them at grandma's house, and then we're going to fly home. We're going to put them in our pockets. Our kids are going to have them, and they're going to be throwing their toys, if your kids are anything like mine. And so the damage and things like that can happen when that takes place can cause those batteries to catch fire, emit toxic gases, produce a lot of heat, can cause burns. They're not dangerous on an everyday basis, but if they get damaged or if they get overheated, then they can cause problems.
Mm-hmm. What's some of the common uses of these lithium-ion batteries? I mean, I think most of us recognize, say, a cell phone, but are there other types that we would not really normally think about?
Yeah, definitely your cell phone is number one. The e-cigarettes that you might have in your pocket.
Oh, e-cigarettes they're everywhere these days.
They are. Key fobs for your car. And your Apple Watch or rechargeable watches that you have, any of those things. But then also, like you talked about, the kids' toys, right? Any of the dolls that talk, the remote control cars, the little computers that you even give your babies to learn computers for the first time. All of those sorts of toys have lithium batteries in them.
Well, and then, some of the bigger lithium batteries that are, I like power tools. So,
yes.
My
kids have a rechargeable car.
Cordless drill is, one of those lithium-ion batteries.
They are.
And those are great tools and batteries that really power a lot of the tools out there. We've got EV cars, right? That's like one of the biggest users of lithium-ion batteries.
Even my lawnmower.
Yeah, right. Lawnmower. So lots of different types of batteries. But what are some of the benefits of lithium-ion batteries?
Well, the great thing is they make things portable, right? Like my lawnmower, I don't ever have to go and worry about the gas station. I don't have to plug it in. I can mow my whole yard in an hour, and it's a lot of freedom, right? I don't have to keep replacing my kids' toys. I can just throw them on the charger for a couple hours. So, they're very high energy. They're very compact. They're relatively small. I mean, look how small our phones are, and the watch I wear on my wrist,
Right.
Those things are very small, but they produce a lot of power. My watch can last for days without having to recharge it. So they're very convenient, but convenience comes at a cost.
Well, and so when we're, what are some of the the concerns around, a battery that it goes bad, or how it could maybe I don't know, can it combust? Can it catch on fire? What are some of the hazards associated with improper management or just accidental damage of a lithium-ion battery?
Well, I'm sure you've probably seen a few videos on YouTube of someone's phone catching on fire in their pockets. There's actually a nurse that I know who had a spare battery for her e-cigarette in her pocket along with some change. And the coins touched the terminals of that e-cigarette and caused it to short circuit. It caught fire in her pocket and caused some pretty significant burns. Things that you just don't expect. You drop your keys a few times and that battery starts to swell. I had a laptop that the battery started to swell. Those things can catch on fire. They can smoke. They can emit toxic gases. They produce a lot of heat, which can really hurt, even if it doesn't catch fire. And then the problem is once one lithium battery catches fire, any other lithium batteries in the vicinity of it can also start to catch fire. So you end up with a thermal runaway situation where, and they're really hard to put out. Once they ignite, It's really difficult to put those batteries out. They keep reigniting. They're just so energy intense that there really is a lot of risk, a lot more than we used to have with our old alkaline batteries.
What types of, if you're responding to a fire, a lithium-ion fire, what types of products or fire equipment do you use to put them out?
So it depends. In an industrial setting, the best thing is halon. That's the one thing that they have shown has the most effect on extinguishing a lithium battery fire. But of course, halon is an asphyxiant, so you can't use that in a setting where there's actually people. But places where there's computer labs or industrial equipment, it works well. In a fire setting, the most likely thing that they'll do is a lot of water, because if you don't use enough water, then you actually make the fire worse. But AFFF foam, which is aqueous film-forming foam. It's based on animal fats, and it will lay on top of something as opposed to, like if you have an oil fire, to lay on top of the oil as opposed to making it float. That will help coat the batteries. It's not 100% effective, and it still can reignite in that situation, but it can buy you some time.
Okay.
That's one of the things that really scares me about electric vehicles.
Yeah, EVs. We've seen a lot of car kind of catching on fire.
Scooters, e-bikes.
Yeah, scooters, e-bikes. There has been a lot of fires associated with the batteries and the concerns around that. And what's driving that? Why are the batteries discharging and running away, so to speak, so easily to cause this?
Well, if you think about the little button cell batteries that might be in your watch or your kids' toys, some of them are really small, some of them may be quarter-sized, versus an e-bike battery, which is significantly larger, or think about an electric vehicle, that battery is humongous. So there's a lot of cells in there, there's a lot of power, there's a lot of energy, and the more energy you have stored, the more risk there is. But then you think about, picture like a 2 or 3 car accident on the highway. If they're all electric vehicles, that collision, that impact is going to cause damage to those batteries. And that's one of the main things that causes these things to catch fire and have that thermal runaway. But now if you have one car catch fire and you've got all these cars smushed together, now those are going to catch fire too. And that is a lot of energy in one little location. So the heat that you get from one car will quickly cause the other ones to be involved as well.
Well, what are some of the main regulatory requirements for companies or owner-operators or generators of batteries? And are there any shipping requirements associated with lithium-ion? I know there are,
yeah,
but let's walk through it a little bit for the listener, because I think that's important.
Okay, so let's talk about a few things that are going to be new this year. So in May of this coming year, certain types of batteries will not be able to be shipped with more than a 30% charge, 30% or less of their capacity to be charged. That's going to be a new regulation. They've asked that people already start doing that, but it doesn't actually become effective for a little while yet. Some other things that are changing, there's some proposed regulations for all sorts of new proper shipping names, ways to what to call these batteries to indicate different hazards like propagation or emitting toxic gases like we talked about.
Right.
So you got to keep up with these rules. They change very frequently. So one of the things, if you are the manufacturer of the battery, that you have to produce is test results to show that the battery is safe for transportation. So when you're shipping the batteries to the customers that are going to be using them in the toys that they manufacture, you have to be able to ship those test results, because when they ship them, they have to be able to prove that they've been tested. Then you have to treat them as a hazardous material. Even if they're very small, there may still be regulations that you have to follow in order to ship those. And it depends on whether you're shipping batteries by itself, like in a blister pack, or if you're shipping them with equipment or already installed in equipment. The regulations change for those different scenarios.
Hello, ET Nation. I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. If you enjoy the interviews we bring you, please consider supporting the program by visiting my website at SeanKGrady.com and buy me a cup of coffee. Proceeds will go towards helping me continue producing timely content and offsetting production costs. I'd also like to take a moment and recognize a few of our sponsors of the show who have been amazing partners and who are ET Nation legends. If you're looking for a driller and an environmental contracting firm to help you delineate the extent of contamination at your site, then look no further than Cascade Environmental. Cascade has over 37 offices across the country and offers a huge range of environmental and geotechnical drilling, site characterization, and remediation services. With their huge fleet of equipment and nationwide coverage, Cascade is a great choice to support your environmental and infrastructure needs. To learn more about their company, visit their website at cascade-env.com. That's cascade-env.com. I'd also like to give a shout out to Enthalpy Analytical. If you're looking for a single source for all your laboratory testing services, give Enthalpy Analytical a call. With their network of accredited laboratories, experienced project managers, chemists, and industry professionals, they have everything you need to support your next project. They can analyze anything from drinking water, groundwater, soil, sediment, sludge, air, and much more. To learn more about Enthalpy Analytical, visit their website at enthalpy.com. That's enthalpy.com. Finally, I'd like to recognize Zappa Stewart, the leading provider of superabsorbent polymer technology for the power, dredging, oil and gas, and remediation sectors for over 20 years. When a reliable, fast, and cost-effective liquid waste solidification solution is needed, customers count on Zappa Stewart's brand of SAPs and technical expertise. When liquid waste needs to be out of sight and out of mind, give Zappa Stewart a call. To learn more about Zappa Stewart, go to my website at SeanKGrady.com. That's SeanKGrady.com. Now, let's dive back into this interview. So, I think most of the batteries are being shipped under universal waste regulations, and so
when they're going for disposal, they are, yes.
Yeah, and I was kind of wanting to get into maybe, what are you seeing most companies dealing with as far as the challenges or the ways they're either recycling or reusing or reselling? Because a lot of times what we've seen is like a lot of these batteries still have an extended life capability, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe not for the existing application that they were made for, but others. So, what are you seeing around in that space with companies right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing that people see, that most of the people that are using these batteries are not the people that manufacture them. They're making something that the batteries go in. They're making a toy, or they're making a piece of equipment, or something like that. So their expertise is not the battery. Right. Their expertise is what they do. So understanding the regulations that apply now that they've put a battery in it, or lithium battery, that's the hardest part right now, because the regulations are quickly changing. They're kind of complex. Some of the terminology that is being used in the regulations may not be what people normally use that term as. So, when they say batteries packed with equipment, you may not think that toy is equipment, right? So there's some misunderstandings about what it is that's required. And then the other thing too is knowing that you can't just put this stuff in the trash, right? You don't want to put it in a landfill. It's going to cause fires. It's going to cause risks to the people that are working in that landfill. So sending those to the proper recycling center is also challenging, because, the homeowners, they don't know that. They're just going to throw the batteries in the trash. What do they know? But it's a risk. And that's one of the main things that people are not well educated about.
So, in some countries, and I think Canada, maybe in Europe, but I'm not sure how far it extends in the US, but there's the consumer kind of product responsibility where they're having to take back the product and repurpose it, recycle it. Do you see that those extended responsibilities happen more will take place here in the U.S. with these types of batteries, like into EV cars or some of the bigger batteries that are out there?
Well, I think one of the things that stopped being a thing, if I don't know if you remember Radio Shack, but Radio Shack was doing that for a long time. They would have barrels in the stores where people could put batteries to be recycled, lithium batteries.
Yeah.
And as a result, they burned down multiple stores. It's one of the things that helped Radio Shack go out of business. And so I think if companies do that, there's going to have to be a lot of thought. Yeah, a process, a lot of thought going into how that happens. Because what was happening is people don't know, right? So they would take the batteries and just toss them into the barrel and walk away and do their shopping and then leave. And the terminals would be touching, short-circuiting, causing fires, and all those batteries all there together. One would catch fire, then the next, and you know how that goes. So if they do that, there's going to have to be a very planned process that's strictly executed.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the benefits of recycling, and kind of the environmental, social, benefits around that from a sustainability perspective. Why is it so important to recycle these types of lithium-ion batteries?
Well, there's not that much lithium in the world to begin with. So by recycling, it means we don't have to mine as much.
Right.
So we're not putting it in the landfills, which is a safety hazard for the people that work there, as well as our environment. It can leach into the soil. But then also, we don't have to keep taking more and more resources out of the earth. There's not that much lithium, and the demand for lithium is going to far outstrip the supply if we keep going the rate we're going. So they are looking for alternatives, safer alternatives, but the current alternatives don't have nearly as much energy density. So they're not a readily available option as an alternative. I think development is going to happen. Eventually they will come up with something. But for right now, the more lithium that we can reuse, the less we have to take out of the earth.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really. It's just, let's not mine the natural resources of our earth out to get, to keep producing them. And there's going to be a bigger demand of it. I mean, the EV cars, the transition from, fossil fuels to EV is underway. It's slow. It's not to where we really want to be, I think, as a society yet, but it's getting there. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be in place for this transition to properly take place.
We need an alternative to charge them too, though.
Yeah.
Because right now we're still using fossil fuels to charge them. We're not reducing our fossil fuel footprint right now.
We need renewable.
Yeah, exactly. So, when you plug your phone into the wall, where do you think that electricity is coming from? It's probably coming from the coal or nuclear power plant that you have down the road.
Yeah.
It's not coming from a renewable source, a sustainable source.
Right.
So all these lithium batteries really aren't having the impact that people think they are. They think they're doing great for the planet. The cars don't have the emissions and so forth, but the power plants still do.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great point. But I think that if we look at it, the more that we could reuse some of these lithium-ion batteries. So, for instance, I'm familiar with a company that started up, and they're like, hey, we will take your spent lithium-ion batteries from your vehicles, and we're going to take those and we're going to configure them and stack them in a way that we can make it and use it as an alternative energy source, like a genset, just for alternative power.
Yeah.
In the event there's an emergency backup type stuff.
Well, and the lithium batteries are cells, right? So you get a giant lithium battery, there could be hundreds of cells in there. You can easily take that apart, take out the bad cells, properly dispose of them, and then reuse the ones that are still good in a different formation. Take, a different type of battery or a different, structure, or, there's a zillion different things you could do with them if you can recover them. Right.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So what are maybe an example of a project or a client scenario where you've come in and you do an assessment and you're like, oh my gosh, have you ever been recycling or storing your batteries properly? Because let's talk about the requirements for store batteries and recycle batteries at a like an operating location.
So no, not so much with recycle batteries, but I think the thing I've come across the most is people don't know they have them.
Right.
I walked into a warehouse for a new client that was hiring me because they wanted to start doing hazardous materials in a warehouse. This was a logistics company. And they said, we don't have any hazardous materials. I said, okay, well, let's see what you got. So we took a tour through the facility, and the first thing I saw was stacks and stacks of e-bikes, which are not small lithium batteries. Those are not button cells.
Right.
So it turns out they had 28,000 of them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they had no idea that they had hazardous materials. The shipper that shipped them to them did not tell them. The paperwork didn't show it, and they just didn't know. They didn't recognize that symbol on the package that it was a lithium battery. So
That's a big one.
yeah, it was a pretty big shock. And when I told them, they were pretty floored.
So what did that make them, what did they start to have to do to come into compliance at that point for them?
So
for you?
their first reaction was, well, let's get him out of here. Let's send him back. I'm like, okay, well, if you do, this is what you have to do. And I started going through the list. They're like, well, what are other choices? I said, the other choice you have is to get the training that you need, store them properly, get the fire controls that you need in place, because local fire codes are different for everywhere that you're going to be.
Yep.
If you're in Chicago versus Indiana versus, it's going to be different. Even in the same town, if they're under a county rule versus a city rule. So understanding the fire codes and what's required and the significant number of batteries that they had in that space, they were going to have to do some things to get up to the fire code, to do the training, to prepare to be able to ship them back out to the customers or even back out to their customer. So it was going to be expensive either way. So I don't know what sort of conversation they had with their customer about that, but I'm sure it was heated.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah, I would imagine they didn't realize they had, lots of batteries now they need to comply with, regulatory.
And it was going to be expensive. I mean, their lease didn't account for Hazmat yet. They were going to renegotiate their lease. So there was a lot of things that had to happen. It was very expensive.
So, are there any industry trends or potential future applications for these lithium-ion batteries? We kind of were talking about maybe this reusing of these batteries, but anything else that you might see that are out there that we can maybe touch on that, just trying to wonder, we've got, obviously the EV cars is one, but anything else what about electronics, or is there any other space in that,
I think medical devices is probably the one that I would expect the most. You used to have to change out hearing aid batteries. Now my hearing aids are rechargeable. I just stick them in their little case overnight, and even the case is rechargeable. I can charge the hearing aids and take the case with me without a charger cord.
Right.
It'll last 2 or 3 charges. So I think medical devices is definitely a place where that's probably going to grow. Even pacemakers right now, the doctor can make changes to the pacemaker remotely, send the changes, and you never even have to see the doctor. It's all done by computer. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So I think medical devices is going to be a place where that starts to happen more, probably pain relief applications, things like that.
Yeah, I got to imagine. So some of the regulatory changes that are coming down the pike are pretty noteworthy. What about is there any labeling requirements that are changing that we need to be concerned about?
So if they change to these other UN numbers, I believe there will be some changes to the labels. This regulation is pending. It's still, it's still being discussed at the UN. Nothing is finalized. But if they do go with this regulation that they've got being discussed right now in committee, they're introducing, I believe it's 32 new UN numbers for lithium and sodium ion batteries. And so that's going to cause a lot of changes. And labeling changes may be part of that. We'll see what happens when the rule is finalized. But as of right now, it used to be just a plain old Class 9 label, which is that black and white one with the stripes. And now you have to have the black and white with the stripes that has a battery icon on the label.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's a fairly new adaptation. But keep your eye out. I think it's going to be changing even more when this new regulation is finally put out there, the new guideline.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, and I think a lot of people are wondering, what are some of the requirements for shipping, these batteries, and I think everyone's worried of having their products in a UPS truck or something like that, and it catches on fire, and the liability associated with that, and so people are, because it's a real thing, right? I mean, and I think that's a big
there's
concern.
all kinds of videos of that happening. I in the book that I wrote a few years ago, I have a couple of pictures of, actually one in particular of I believe it was a UPS truck that was burned to the frame in someone's driveway from a lithium battery.
They can be very dangerous. So I think definitely the proper handling and storage of these batteries is really important.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give parents out looking to buy these rechargeable batteries for their children's toys this year?
I would say, keep an eye on the condition of the device, right? if the device is getting hot when you charge it, something is wrong. You're going to want to probably replace that battery or take the device to where you bought it. If it's like a cell phone or something that you can't replace the battery, take it back to them and say, hey, this is getting hot when we charge it. That's a warning sign that something's wrong.
Okay.
If you have a laptop and you see the keyboard is swelling in your laptop and the keyboard's getting pushed out, it's because the battery has swelled inside.
That's not good.
That's not good. That's a very dangerous situation. I had that happen to one of my laptops. And so if, when you have a lithium battery in your pocket, like your toy or your phone or your e-cigarette, make sure there's nothing else metal in your pocket. Don't put your keys in there with your e-cigarette batteries. Be careful with, especially the spare batteries that are not already installed in the equipment. Those are the ones that get really risky. Have some way to protect them, or just don't put them in your pocket.
E-cigarettes, let's touch on that one. I'm starting to see so many people use e-cigarettes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I see them laying around on the ground. People are done with them, and that seems to be like a hazard right there.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I haven't seen that, but that would be kind of scary if that's what's actually happening. Yeah.
I've seen them where, yeah.
Hopefully they just dropped them, didn't throw them there, but you're probably right.
I've seen a few, yeah. So in that scenario, that e-cigarette could be, if it gets water on it. It
goes down into the sewer, it gets rained on.
Yeah, right. So it is a hazard. So how would you recommend someone, if they saw those types of devices, how to, properly dispose of it if they're just picking up, like you're a maintenance guy, clean up streets or something, you see that, what would you do?
So they actually have cases for damaged batteries that you can be able to ship those off for proper recycling. And if you have something like that, it's not cheap, unfortunately, but the safety aspect is big. So I would recommend that you have a few of those boxes to be able to take care of things like that if you're seeing that as a trend near where you are.
I've got a few dead cordless batteries that are the lithium-ion batteries that are just like, okay, they're, they won't charge anymore.
Right.
My Ryobi little drill or weed eater battery is just not working anymore, So I'm assuming, and I think people like Home Depot and Lowe's, you could just take the batteries back there and they'll take them for recycling.
I'm not sure about that, but I know that a lot of municipal disposal facilities, your local dump or whatever, they will have a place to take recycled batteries or damaged batteries.
Okay. Yeah, that's
so
true.
You can call in our town at 611 to get information about that. It might be something different where you live, but that's usually municipal trash services have something where you can take recycle, batteries to be recycled or that are damaged.
We have a household hazardous waste type pickup annually,
exactly.
Right? That we take stuff to. So it's batteries or
paint.
Other. So Wendy, some of the services you offer are in person and online hazmat training.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the services you guys offer, different types of classes and courses you're offering clients to maintain their hazmat training.
So we are a consulting company, so we offer a broad range of services, but one of the services we get asked for probably about 30% of the time is training. You have to have required hazmat training, within 90 days of employment or within 3 years to get it refreshed. So, it used to be most of our training was in-person training. We could provide hands-on training. We could be there with the students, ask questions on the fly, answer concerns that they had, things that they had seen. And that is a great way to do training.
Right.
It's very interactive. It keeps it more interesting. And when you get to do the hands-on training, you're able to apply those lessons in a real life setting, right? Because that's one thing most people struggle with is taking things from a learning environment, a classroom or a book, reading a book, and then being able to apply it in the real world.
Right.
So by providing the hands-on training, we're able to make that connection for them right there with them, and we can see on their faces whether they understand.
Right.
Unfortunately, ever since COVID, people have really made a push to online training.
Right. It has. It's a real thing.
Yeah, it is a real thing. So these computer-based training or CBT, most of them are, honestly, they're kind of boring. They're essentially PowerPoint slides that you just have to listen to the person talk and click to the next slide. And, they're either putting them off to the side and doing something else, or they're fast-forwarding the videos. So if you're going to do online training, having a high quality program that remains interactive, has, even the gamification, which is a new trend, but it really helps. Even silly little games is a lot more interesting than click, click, click. So if you're going to do the online training, have something that actually has value for your people, that is not just checking a box.
So online training, have you done in person kind of like virtual, like I'm going to take the class, I'm going to teach it right now. Like we're talking,
Yes.
people are online, they can see us and then we can interact in a real live setting essentially, but just virtually instead of doing a PowerPoint. So you're doing those types of in-person or real live type trainings virtually though, right?
So we offer two types of, let's say, online training. What you're talking about is what we call a webinar, where it's it's still remote. Everyone's at their own desks, looking
Right.
at their own computers,
Right.
but it's still live, taught by a live instructor.
Right.
Still interactive. I can still ask questions, pause things to take breaks, or do a demonstration. So that's a webinar style. But then the other one that we offer is basically
Modules, you just click through.
yeah, but ours is different because we do it the same exact way we do it in person. It's the
Okay.
same live class. It's still a live instructor giving a program. It's not just a video to watch, that sounds like a National Geographic show. It's a live interactive but recorded session. So it's the same class that you'll get in person minus the hands-on training, which we can't possibly do. But we do provide the gamification to simulate that online training. So, for example, in our online training class that we have available now, there's a placarding exercise where you actually have to placard a truck.
Okay.
It's for a driver. This particular one is for a hazmat driver. So it's an LTL, less than truckload. So they have to go multiple stops, pick up multiple things. So what placards do you apply at each stop? And that is helping to supplement the hands-on training that we can't deliver in a computer-based class.
Sure. Well, that makes sense. Are you walking them through the ERG book and making
Little bit,
them,
yeah.
making them pick a, placard number and find out the hazards associated with them and things like that?
Yep, absolutely. So, it's real questions with, real life scenarios. Even our videos are all real life scenarios. Listen, I don't want to teach you what 172.101 is all about, right? I want to teach you what the regulations mean to you, how to practically apply them, how to make them work for you. Because one of the things that I have found in my very long career, you made me sound so old when you said that earlier. One of the things that I found is that people, they don't understand that the regulations tell you what you have to do, but they don't tell you how to do it. Exactly. So being able to adapt the regulations in a way that works best for your organization, that's what makes you successful. That's what can keep you profitable. That's what can give you that competitive advantage. And so I want to teach you how to apply those regulations and when they apply to you and when they don't, rather than, 173, 121 says this is what a flammable liquid is, So I think that is a more applicable and approachable way to learn those regs.
Well, that's good. I mean, and so are you doing also like kind of like the standard DOT training, the RECRA training, any HAZWOPER training? I mean, talk about the different types of training you offer.
So we do DOT training primarily. We can do RICRA training. I don't get involved in HAZWOPER. That's not my expertise. So if people want HAZWOPER training, I have a few people they can talk to that are better at that than I am. But DOT training, that's where we shine. And we do all modes of transportation. We do transloading. We can do for warehouses. We can customize it for shippers versus carriers. If you're shipping by 3 modes, then we can do it all 3 modes for you. If you're shipping small packages, it's a different class than if you're shipping bulk packages like tank trucks and rail cars and things like that. So we really want to customize it so that you're not getting a bunch of stuff you don't need and tuning us out. If you go to some of the training companies that are out there right now and you go to one of their public workshops, it's very general and everyone will get the same thing. Whether you work for a little small shipper or you're working for a giant refinery, you'll get the same class and not everything in that class will apply to you. So you end up taking 2 to potentially 4 days of training and most of it has nothing to do with you. So by customizing it, we shorten the amount of time that you have to be in class and we make sure that it's relevant to you so that you're paying attention.
Yeah. So that probably takes a little time to kind of walk through and work with the client to understand what their business is before you develop the actual class. And I'm assuming you're covering IATA, TDG, DOT, all the various, transportation regulations.
Yes, we can do, like you said, IATA for the air regulations, IMDG for vessel, TDG for Canada, DOT for the U.S. We don't really do ADR and RID, but if you want that, then we have people that can do that for you.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Which is the European regulations.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there's some complications there, and there's a lot of companies that are working, globally here in the U.S. So they need that support. Yeah.
Yeah, we work with companies all over the world, but primarily on regulations for the U.S. and Canada.
So, Wendy, what's the best Christmas gift you ever remember receiving?
So 1985 or so, my sister and I got Cabbage Patch Kids. It's the only gift we wanted. They were all the rage at the time.
Yep.
And I wanted a redheaded Cabbage Patch. My sister wanted a blonde one, and my parents got them switched. So my sister and I were both pretty upset. So my mom's like, why don't you guys trade? So we traded, and then we were both happy. It was the best Christmas ever.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I can remember mine. My brother and I, we both received stereos. I think he was 12. I was 13 or something like that. And it was the best.
Was it like competing stereos?
They were the
rooms?
Same ones.
No, I mean, like you were playing one song, he was playing another. Your poor parents.
Well, probably. When he had one in his bedroom and I had one in mine, and we had our own little music. But I can remember the first albums that I received was Styx Paradise Theater and Michael Jackson's Off the Wall. And I thought I was the coolest guy around, just playing those albums, and that kind of got me into really enjoying buying music and really.
Yeah, I remember we had a Cabbage Patch Kid record player, actually. And the first album I got was the Annie soundtrack.
Oh, wow. That's classic. That's great. That
of course, I was a little kid at the time. But,
sure. Well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what you did.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, this has been good. So, Wendy, thanks for coming on to the show and helping us kind of break down lithium-ion batteries and the hazards associated with them, some of the regulations that are coming down or potentially coming down because, well, there's still a few out there that need to be kind of finalized, but there's still concern about lithium-ion batteries and the using them, and there are dangers around it. And I think just being aware of how to properly handle them is probably the best advice we could give them.
Absolutely. And, if you don't know, ask, right? I'm here to answer questions for anyone. You can reach me on my website, starshazmat.com. Just write to us. Ask us questions if you need to. That's what we're here for.
That's right. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, Wendy, thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
And have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and watching the show. If you enjoyed the show, then please share it with your friends and coworkers on social media and tell somebody in person. Thanks for being with us, ET Nation.